Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we discuss all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring. Because I feel like it's like the 1950s in America when Nebraska was like the first school to implement any form of strength and conditioning, and it was for their football program, and they ended up winning games like season after season. A lot of schools started to see that recipe and started implementing their own strength training programs, and then those schools started to win. So bigger, faster, stronger in that case.
It's changed so much. Like I think when my first job was at Geelong Grammar, and I think part of the reason they only had a gym there was because they had boarders. Like if they didn't have boarders, I don't know whether they would have had. And the S&C facility was run by a PE teacher who was really passionate about his lifting, unbelievable guy, but still obviously that bit of crossover. And then now that facility is run by Tom Van Kalken, who is a really experienced S&C coach. But it's interesting thinking back to then. There wasn't a lot of high school jobs out there. I don't think much has changed as far as like your soccer academies, rugby academies. We need to invest more money. Look at the UK as an example. Their best coaches from an S&C point of view are in their academies. Like in particular, talking about football now, obviously they've got so much more money. So it'll be interesting to see where it heads, because obviously now more schools are investing in gyms. So now schools are starting to get the really good S&C coaches, which maybe these NAB League Talent League now, soccer academies. At times there's a bit of a clash around who has sort of ownership of the student athletes, whereas I think it's got to become more collaborative. Like because the reality is, if you're at a talent league team, you could have one coach to 90 kids, and like I don't care how good an S&C you are, that's a pretty tough ratio to have, you know what I mean? And it's not the coaches that are there's fault by any means, it's just the reality of the funding they've got. So I think we need to try and use each other in a way to try and get the best outcome for the students, you know what I mean? So
yeah, it's going to be it's definitely got a lot more growth. I think the fact that I look at it from two perspectives. I think number one is, I think from the health perspective, I think schools, students are sitting more than ever before. So we need to kind of like incorporate some sort of physical activity within. I do think gym should be a part of the curriculum. I actually really believe that, from all levels, all ages. Whether or not the schools can fund that, it's another story. And this probably leads to the next point I want to talk about is from that perspective, it's like when kids are actually physically active, we end up seeing more of an upside in terms of their grades. Because it doesn't happen in isolation. Just because you study more doesn't mean your grades are going to be good. But when you can combine that with some level of exercise or structured physical activity on a daily basis, it has more of a net positive on their schooling as well. Then as a result, the school does well, the mood's better, the whole school morale improves. So there's just a huge, domino effect when it comes to incorporating that within the schools. Then seeing the programs grow over time. Obviously, I've kind of witnessed and been a part of the Brighton Grammar program. I hear stories of other schools as well and what they're doing, and they're doing, relatively well. There's still a long way to go compared to, the UK and, what I've witnessed in the US as well. And I think when schools can see there's a net positive, not just from a sport performance perspective, but from a student well-being perspective, then I think it will have a net positive on everything in general. Kids are less likely to get sick, more likely to get healthier, more likely to focus in class, better grades. Parents are going to be happier there's some sort of physical activity involved, because they might even struggle because they're probably working more often than ever before. Actually, I had something really cool happen. It was probably late last year. One of the kids we used to train, and she goes to a private school as well, and she does gym at the private school. She was with us for about 9 months, and she had some hip issues coming to us, and it was all fine. But then I found out that one of the coaches there, she had witnessed her take one of her friends through an actual strength training session. So then it creates some level of leadership for those who are relatively new, who have done the gym for quite a while, to take someone new and teaching them how to do a goblet squat. And I'm like, that's great. And you're kind of inadvertently creating the environment for them to grow as an individual as well. And the good thing about the gym is it's kind of like, it's a place where you can push yourself and test your boundaries in a relatively safe manner. for those who are around you, school is kind of like you have pressure to succeed. At least the gym's a little bit different. It's more internal that you want to succeed. With schools that have expectations like, all right, you got to get these grades, or your parents might have these expectations on you to get these grades, or if you're in year 12, your ATAR score is this. Oh, I got to get this, and this, and there's a lot of pressure on that. With the gym, it's a little bit different. You're kind of creating that stress for you that you want to grow and develop, and then the progressive overload system, I think, is a great way for them to learn as well, because you're only overloading them by between 2.5% and 10%. So, and then they see that over multiple training blocks, whether or not they're doing something more like a complex movement, where like a trap bar deadlift, and they might have started 2 sets of 12 and built up to 3 sets of 6 from like 40 kilos all up to 100 kilos, and they can see the progression. It's like you started here, and all we did is incrementally build over a period of time, and it creates that representation of life. You have to put your body under some level of stress, just enough of what you're used to. Your body adapts, recovers. We come back and do it again next time around. I think it's a great. The gym is like a great metaphor for what they're going to face in life, and it really builds that level of resiliency in them moving forward.
Yeah, no, I love what you said about the leadership side of things as well, because like one thing that we shifted to, we had sort of our year 7s come in on their own, year 8s come in on their own, and so at times it's sort of depending on their engagement, fluctuate our numbers. So sort of we're chatting during COVID, I think it was, to might have even been Nathan Parnham from Brisbane Grammar, and he just said there how he had 7 to 12 in the gym at one time, and I was sort of like, oh geez, how could you do that? Wouldn't it be chaos? And I was like, all right, maybe we'll try it. And so we've sort of got open sessions throughout the week where year 7 to 12 can all come in at the same time, and it's we can have 30-40 boys in the gym and it's chaos, but what it does happen is that you get a year 12 boy talking to a year 7 boy and sort of engaging with each other, which is really cool. Or we've got a group of year 8s that are coming in really consistently at the moment. If they bring a new mate in, like we could be overcoaching someone, and I look over and then they're talking through their mate around what was happening just with their lift and that side of things. So I was pretty nervous about having it at the start. I'm like, someone's going to hurt themselves. It's going to be, it's not going to work. But it's actually created a really cool environment in our gym, and the leadership opportunities and the way the boys engage with each other in those sessions is something that I think is really cool and really unique about our program.
And I think the other thing is as well with that is they're actually replicating you and the other coach's behavior as well in terms of coaching. So then you have like this huge domino effect, or this flow-on effect. You probably heard the analogy of the gusts. The gusts of the wings of a butterfly created this tornado somewhere else, right? So it's kind of like that. It's become this huge domino effect that the kids will coach themselves first, then they'll coach each other. And then from a learning perspective, if for those who want to understand learning more, I think we only learn from what we hear. It's maybe like 3 to 5%. I think what we see is another 10 to 15%. But when we relay what we've actually learned, I think it's close to 50% of what we retain that. So imagine if they do that numerous times with their friends or something like that, they're actually going to retain that behavior or retain that learning so much faster compared to you just telling them and or you to just showing them, and then obviously them doing it's going to help a lot. But then when they relay what they've done or what you've said before, same cues, whatever it may be, that's going to help them learn that movement as well as help someone else learn that movement as well.
Sure. I mean, and that independence that they're getting from it as well, I think really helps with their engagement. Like we sort of initially with our sort of phase 1, we used to be really trying to be really quite structured with our 7 and 8s, and I think in hindsight that probably pushed the year 8 boys away, and they started wanting to go to external gyms and that kind of stuff instead of coming to us. So having that adaptation, and we sort of restructured our phases a bit to deal with that. But yeah, having that independence and being able to engage with each other while still obviously giving them that guidance, that's led to better outcomes with their engagement and that sort of thing in the program.
That's good. And where do you see Brighton moving in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see the growth?
Yeah, so we're potentially going to have sort of a rehab coordinator role start next year, which will be really important in what we do. It's definitely a growth area for us. You know, we're sort of speaking before we started around sort of stress injuries. That's probably something that's super common, like whether
chronic loads.
Yeah, whether it's foot stress. We've had back stress. He's had numerous back stresses, especially with our cricketers and rowers and that sort of thing. So, having someone that can manage that and liaise with physios and that kind of thing, and just streamline that process is going to be really beneficial for us. Because at times it's been one full time plus casuals, and there's only so much you can fit in to what you do. So it had been a bit clunky previously. So the fact now that with having an extra full time, our rehab and that sort of stuff's been better, but then having that person that can really streamline that for us and help the students if they are injured will be something really important for us. And then look, hopefully as the school continues to see the value of it and that sort of thing, whether we can get sort of more another staff member, whether that's 0.5, 0.8, 1.0, that would be quite exciting for us. So I think that's sort of hopefully where it'll head, just getting bigger from what we do and being able to help more students.
Yeah, and probably just concentrate, I guess, concentrate your services and what you can actually deliver to the school and how it's kind of like come back later on down the track. And I think strength and conditioning is probably one of the weirdest industries because you don't see the value of it until months, if not years later, unfortunately. But then it sounds like the Brighton's really kind of caught onto it, and it's like, yep, we want to. Can you do this? All right, great, cool. Then you just move forward with it as well. So they seem really open to different ideas moving forward. Anything else you want to share that's happening in your world, that in the S&C side that you're doing at the moment?
I'm personally doing some stuff at Richmond as VFL High Performance Manager. So that's been really cool because, probably something that was a challenge for me during COVID was, I guess, you're sort of one out as a manager. You didn't really have any other S&C coaches within your team to sort of network with and learn off. So the fact to be sort of going there and then be at the bottom and getting the opportunity to talk with other really experienced coaches and just look at programming in a little different way, because obviously with our syllabus and curriculum at Brighton, it's quite structured. We know our progressions. We know what we want to do. And with our Active for Life and Train to Compete, I know what we need to do to get there. So by being in the footy club environment, all of a sudden you've probably got a little bit more of a performance focus as opposed to just a development focus. So that's sort of been quite enjoyable for me, just to have that sort of stimulus, so to speak, and sort of changes a little bit the way that I think about it, particularly our older boys. All right, so I've got a year 11 or 12 that's potentially going to go to college for rowing or getting ready for the draft. All right, what can we sort of take from what they're going to be doing and expose them to at that next level? What can we sort of add to our programming there just to enhance that ability to be ready to compete?
It's almost like a PD for you to implement with Brighton Grammar to some degree.
Yeah. So and that's the way I've sort of approached it. It's just some extra learning, a lot of hours, but some really good opportunity to develop myself as a coach and that sort of thing.
Cool. And I guess where do you see yourself in going the next 3 to 5 years with S&C?
Look, I love the school area, and I think it's an area where I definitely see myself being in the future, but I'd be lying if I didn't sort of say I've got that little itch to try and work in, whether it's professional sport or with that in that high performance environment. So that would hopefully be something where I sort of see myself in 3 to 5 years. Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I guess what are the key takeaways, wrapping up from what we said, that you would give to any like youth athlete that's coming in through the door? Say you've got a year 7 at Brighton Grammar and they're coming in for the first session. What would be like 2 or 3 key takeaways for them for their their strength training journey over the next 5 years?
Yeah, my philosophy's probably pretty simple. Like, I really believe that if you have fun and enjoy what you do, you're more likely to buy in and do it, and be consistent. So, if we get a year 7 in, we want to try and create an environment where it's fun and engaging for them, so that they enjoy coming in with their friends. Whether it's getting them to lift weights for the first time, or doing a little circuit, or a bit of an arm farm at the end, or whatever it is to get that engagement, making sure they have fun, and then just getting them to understand the importance of consistency. Because if they're consistent across, the next 5-6 years they're going to be with us, their results are going to be through the roof, and we've seen that with the ones that can, come in the most. They've had some really, really pleasing results.
Yeah, following up with that, do you see that as a general trend for those who end up, getting drafted or selected for whatever elite program? Do you tend to see that for those who are the most consistent from year 7 to year 12? Is that the general trend that you tend to see?
Yeah, for sure. Like, we've had we had a number 2 draft pick and a number 7 draft pick. I don't know, we'll go to footy a bit, but last year, and they obviously they had the work ethic and that sort of thing, and were really driven, but they just didn't miss. And there's a reason that they're where they are within the AFL, because they just didn't miss training. We've had same with kids that have gone to college for soccer or rowing. They're just consistent with their behaviours, and I find that's really the most important thing. So if I could get any youth athlete to take one message, is just be consistent with your training.
Then follow up from that is, in terms of injury rate, do you set for those who are generally consistent, what's their injury rate like to those who are not as consistent or infrequent? Do you see a general trend with that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I haven't necessarily done a study on it or anything. Actually, there was a paper that came out from Sydney Grammar that from the ACA recently that looked into that, and they were sort of claiming those that were more consistent that had a reduced injury rate. As far as what we've seen at Brighton, yeah, I think just thinking about our footy team and that sort of thing, I think obviously you can get injured anyway, but yeah, I think that you could definitely make a pretty strong case for those that are more consistent with their training and their behaviours. They're more likely to stay injury free, whereas the ones we've seen in particular this year, like, they probably have been inconsistent with their training behaviours, and hence have had, whether it soft tissue or some stress related or load related injuries, because they haven't been consistent. Whether that's compounded coming out of COVID and that sort of thing as well, potentially.
Yeah, they probably would have experienced just like from doing very little to going like high load rates. And that's probably caused like the tissue to not be able to deal with that high stress, rather than being more progressive and gradual in the exposure to that level of stress as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up there. It's been great to have you here. Great to meet up again as well. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, all the wonderful things. We're looking about spreading the message on youth athlete development, and it's been a pleasure to have you here, Ian. And yeah, if you want, I'm sure we'll find you somewhere on the socials and LinkedIn and all that jazz. Yeah, for sure. No, I really appreciate you coming in. And yeah, if you want to connect, LinkedIn's probably a good option. Or yeah, feel free to hit us up via email. Probably my professional social media probably doesn't have much of a presence, but definitely LinkedIn or email would be unreal. Cool. All right. Thanks for your time, and see you on the next one. You have just listened to the Inner Athlete Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.